Welcome to Inner Voice of Knowing podcast. I'm Kaye, a shamanic leadership coach and healer, guiding you through life with a foot in both worlds. When you understand the terrain of the inner landscapes, the mental, emotional, spiritual, and energetic, you will become the leader within your physical life, both personally and professionally. After all, the power of change is in your hands. Let's get this journey started. Welcome back to Inner Voice of Knowing. And I know I say this every time, but I'm really excited with my guests today. I was so impressed when I met Helen Heppingstone, who has now become a friend, a client, a fellow journeyer. And I just had to have Helen on because she's just such an eclectic and extraordinary woman and human being. So let me just take a quick look at this. I loved this. I saw this today. I think it was on your Facebook.
Right.
And, you know, reading what you wrote there, and I just thought that is so different from what most people put. And you had, from an early age, I sought out meaning and insight to help navigate this reality. You also are a yoga instructor. You also do, which I love, synchronized swimming, which is for fun and exercise, I presume. And this one, a previous guest of mine and friend, Kath Sutherland, had told me and spoken to me about you for a long time, going, you two have got to meet. And I'm so glad she did bring us together because you are learning how to translate Sanskrit.
Yeah.
And you chant, which I'm yet to really hear the fullness of that gift. And you also work with high-level thinkers and doers and achievers to fine-tune their efficiency and well-being. Is that a long enough list? Welcome, Helen. Welcome.
Thank you, Kaye. It's exciting to be here.
It's just, and I call you eclectic because I'm a bit like, you're just doing so many things.
Yeah.
But when you meet you, it's like, oh, that just all makes sense.
All comes together.
Yeah, all comes together. It's like all these threads that just sort of meet in the middle. Yeah. So at what sort of age, you know, were you seeking out meaning and insight? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. Right from an early age, I was just trying to understand this world that we live in. Just one of those children that really didn't understand the mainstream way of being. And
so what, the world didn't quite make sense somehow, or?
The world as it was on the surface just didn't really there was no depth to it. There was no, I couldn't really sink in and go with the flow of that surface of the mainstream. And so I really started, right from a very, very young age, really, it started by just getting down into the backyard, into the grass with the cat and just sitting with her and watching the grass.
So like primary school age?
It was even like 4 or 5 years old. So that
I can relate to that. Yeah.
And just, talking to him, trying to get wisdom from the cat.
Shamanic, I can completely get that, like me singing to the cow and the animals. So I understand that.
And I think if you, I don't know, maybe that's that childlike quality, if you really just lay down and you sink and you sit with these sentient beings, answers come from a whole different angle. And who knows, fairies, all of that kind of thing. But this was quite solid. I really like to have a solidity and a structure to feel safe, but within that structure, the cat, I can let go and just get really curious, ask questions from this sentient being.
Yeah.
It sounds really bizarre and I don't even really understand it.
You know what, though, the more I talk about and open up about my so-called crazy experiences, way back in childhood, still happening now, there are so many people when we open up and we share it that sort of go, oh, I was a bit like that too.
the cows and their gentle energy. And as a child, you just feel like you can lean into that energy, and it feels right. It felt right to be able to open up and lean into these energies rather than the quite harsh and fast energy of, even just the cars on the road and you're going to school and it's sit down and, you're just told this is what you've got to learn. And it just didn't make any sense. I wanted to really delve underneath.
I just think at that age that you're asking questions, that people would go big questions.
Yeah.
But as you say, being that curious child, and I've got 7 grandchildren, and I watch them at that very young age, one in particular because we've got him each week, and he's 3, and I can see that the internal unseen world is so connected to the external seen that there's not that division yet. Yeah.
But you then kind of labelled as different.
Yeah.
Here she goes again.
Yes.
And then that's confusing because you're like, well, hang on, that's my experience of the world, is to really just slow everything down and sink into, at home it was the grass and backyard.
Yeah.
To just sink in and watch the clouds and watch the trees, how they move. And it's a fascinating world, but it's beyond what most people are travelling in, and they label as different. So.
And did that stay with you through your teenage years, and did it diminish, or was it a constant companion?
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. It did increase as I went through teen years because it became more than of watching people. It became the fascination of watching people and how people interacted with each other, and especially probably because teen years I was interested and just so fascinated with intimacy and how people were intimate with each other on a really subtle level, the holding of hands, the touch of a hand on somebody's back. So sitting on a train and just watching how people interacted with each other, it was just, high entertainment for me, probably so boring.
Because I too am an observer.
Right.
And because I'm always communicating, didn't realise that's what I was doing as a child, but communicating with that energy and all the energies and observing that via the physicality of people and interaction and
trying to understand.
So no, I understand it,
Trying to understand, you see the interactions and then you watch the facial movements, and does that correspond with the intimacy and the communication that's being shown? So it's like this sitting there and really wanting to understand how the human beings then interrelate and come together. So I suppose it was an evolution from the safety of nature and the animals to then trying to understand and feel safe within the interactions in the human
So what about the disconnect interactions, the harsher, the argumentative or the emotionally shut down? What was happening for you?
I think
observing
that. Yeah. Okay, that's a great.
Or let's say experiencing it, because let's be real, you were there interacting, observing, not just the physicality, but the energetics of it as well.
Okay, that's an interesting. I always feel like I've lived my life as an observer, so the one on the outside of the little bubble of people going about their daily lives, and probably lived in a way that I just want to stay as the observer looking in. And I do come from a very small family here in Australia, migrated from England, when I was 3 years old. So there was 4 of us. So I did have that possibility to actually stay as the observer, because I don't have a big family. We didn't have we had
the extended family.
We didn't have the extended family to be involved intimately in. So I feel like I have lived on the little outside of a dome, in a way, looking in on how everybody operates. So as far as the harsh kind of interactions, again, I was the observer. And with those interactions, I actually, watching, felt really safe, because they were, when people are angry or they're frustrated or they're so fed up, they're just going to give it to the next person. It's so raw. It's so honest. You know exactly how that person is feeling, because it is, screen is off, I'm giving it to you.
Isn't that amazing? By your very nature, almost that soul element of you looking through your physical eyes, because most people would go, oh, I was afraid, but you're saying you felt safe in that.
Because the facial expressions, the energy emanating matched the vocal, the words coming out, the, whatever, the aggression, the anger, the frustration, it all matched. So you knew exactly what was coming out was what was fitting with what was from inside.
I love that you're saying that, because, the word that gets thrown around these days is authenticity. I feel and I know that regardless of where someone is at in their conscious journey, that they're actually being authentic to who and how they are at that or any given point in time.
Yeah.
So even the anger, you can go, oh, well, it comes from here, but they're still being authentic in that moment, and you were witnessing that and feeling safe in it.
Feeling safe. It was like a joy in a way, that I fully knew where that person was coming from. It's like, okay, I've got you covered. I know where you're coming from. And then, okay, yes, when I went out to work in those, as I went through the journey of working, I really resonated with people that were able to just fully let rip.
Raw and real.
Oh, and guys, like, oh, God, I wouldn't react in the same way everybody else in the workplace would react. With me, it was like a real joy. Yeah, I got you. And
oh, and you're being real in it in this moment.
Fantastic. I know exactly where you're coming from.
Were you watching other people, do you think, in hindsight, being locked up?
As far
in how they may have wanted to express, or because, the world is very much, anger is negativity and this is negativity, and we all have to behave this particular way. And
that's a really good perspective of that. I suppose we do have quite a negative kind of layer on anger. And, I do then look at my father. Did not like arguments. So, and I had a brother that was a year older, and we were really, really close. So, of course, we would get into some discussions. And my father would put up his hands and say, no arguing. So, I suppose I found it, because I always think, anger, there's a flip side to anger. And, anger has such power, such expression of deep-seated emotions. And
when you're passionate and you feel deeply, because I know as a child, and I was one of 5 and spread out, and I know there were, I remember one time in particular around the dinner table, and one of my brothers was talking about, baseball and softball and different rules and things, and I'd played both. And I'm a deeply feeling, passionate person. So there's an intensity that comes, but I love debate.
Yeah.
And we were debating, and my father saw it as an argument and put an end to it by making a phone call to someone to solve it.
Right.
And I remember I even looked at my brother, and I think we both felt a bit disappointed. Do you know what I mean? Like, and it wasn't an argument.
Yeah.
It was this sort of debating and, didn't feel anything wrong with that.
I think I have like this deep vortex that goes right down into the guts of my being. And I think what I do is I take on what people are saying. I take on the facial expressions. I take on the energy, and basically any little particle that's in the air, I consume it into my being, and then I take it down into this little vortex.
Yeah.
And it rolls around in this vortex, and then it's just so much, so overwhelming, so intense. And I think as a young child and then as a teenager, to articulate what I was experiencing inside, it would just come out as an explosion, like a volcano. Yeah. And maybe I think that's why Dad would because my brother was very different. He could articulate. He's incredible at articulating how he's feeling and thinking. So he had an ability. And I would just have an overwhelm of expression that was trying to come up.
And then again, how much of it was actually yours? Because this is why I'm so passionate in one aspect of my work of teaching people how to keep their energies clear. And especially for what I would term, I don't like the word empaths because that's a whole nother podcast. But do you know what I mean? We can be more, everyone is impacted by energies, but some more than others.
I think I'm like an open vessel that carries it. Probably more skilled now as far as being able to stay really centered and not go down as deep into that vortex, or if it's there, to sit with that in meditation.
And maybe more witness and observe like you were doing as a child.
And that's where, you know, I teach yoga, I teach Vedic chant, and they are tools that I have used to be able to start to create that space so I don't get lost in that.
So what led you to the yoga and the Vedic chant and, you know, translating Sanskrit? Like, seriously, what sort of shape, you know, tell us the pathway that took you to these places.
Okay, so this as a child, this desperately trying to understand this world that we arrived into. And so, you know, different, but quite a lot of this, you know, kind of deep energy that really didn't know how to express itself. So it came out as, you know, is normal as busyness through the physical body. So right from a young age, 4 or 5, into swimming, then it was into tennis, then it was into netball. So this incredible physical expression, because poor mum and dad, that's all they knew, how to deal with this bundle.
Go and burn it up.
Oh my gosh, I was like a spinning top of energy. So more and more physical expression. But then mum saw that I had hooked into that physical expression, and I was going from 5 a.m. in the morning right through to 9 p.m. at night. And I was swimming captain and sports captain, and I loved it all. But mum desperately thought, well, she's got to learn to slow down somewhere. So at 14, she dragged me along to a yoga session, and this is in the 70s.
How
early,
of your mum.
Oh, yeah, bless her. So she took me along to this yoga session. It probably was 79. 1980. They were the times when in Melbourne it was the big halls, the community halls, and you had, oh my gosh, it felt like 50 or 70 people.
I grew up in Melbourne.
Right, okay. So it was this big hall of people in their daggy tracksuit pants and all of that. And it must have been an Iyengar style yoga. So you get into your postures and you stay and you breathe. And I'm 14 on this whirlpool, on the turbocharge of movement. And I'm in this
were there other 14-year-olds?
Everybody looked at me like they were, you know, anything over 21 at that point or 30 was ancient. So they looked like they were all ancient. Oh my gosh. And then somebody did a pop off, and, you know, it was all going on, and I hated it.
Welcome to yoga.
Welcome to yoga. And then we had to close our eyes at the end. Are you kidding me? I'm not closing my eyes. You've got plenty of time when you've gone to, you know, when you get to close your eyes. No way. Anyway, so that was when I was 14. Then I continued on the trajectory of so active, so busy. I started working 70 hours a week. I was absolutely insane. I was traveling as well.
Were you escaping something?
Definitely. I was basically that dome that I, as a child and a teenager, was looking into, you know, just observe. I was on the outside, not just running. I was turbocharged, just screaming through life. So, oh gosh, I would do things like get on a plane at Friday afternoon and fly over to the UK and then be back for Monday morning to go. I was just at that point where it was out of control. And I then started to drink to calm myself down at night.
Yeah, I was going to ask, was there something?
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, that's, use this kind of alcohol to just numb, to be able to slow down. My body was in such a pattern of just go.
Yeah.
So I got to about 29, really successful, had it all going on, and then the wheels started falling off. I got Ross River virus. I then had adrenal fatigue, and my relationships were a complete mess. My life was just like a ping. I was like a ping pong ball, just pinging, from here to there. So everything fell apart, and I sat there. And I had been going to the gym, and I was from the gym, and I'd had 2 knee reconstructions, and I was there.
Wow.
And I thought, right, I'll start doing boxing. And I was boxing so hard that I fractured my wrist. So I thought, I don't need to change my physical body. I need to change my mind. And what was that thing that my mum dragged me to and made me do? Yoga. I had to do
Isn't that amazing?
So,
seed was planted.
And I turned to this practice of yoga.
Yeah.
But it took me 2 years of making myself go to actually the last part of the practice where you lie down and you close your eyes and put the eye pillow on. 2 years it took me to close my eyes. And when I did, it was like a crack went right through my body, and I started crying.
Was that like, because I'm really picking up that, you made yourself go. Was there something like that inner voice of knowing driving you?
Yeah. I did not want to go. I so wanted to just keep running, going to the gym.
Yeah.
But no, I knew deep inside that I had to change something inside my nervous system and my mind to be able to survive.
And that became stronger than the resistance.
It did.
What a powerful thing.
It did.
At that age in particular.
When everybody around me was still going out and
partying. No teachings, just that knowing.
No teaching. This is the other interesting thing, Kaye, that actually came in at that time, making myself go to yoga, but not really understanding the depth of this teaching until I heard about the founding ethics of the practice. And that is, in Sanskrit, it's referred to as the yamas and the niyamas, and it's a set of principles that you can live your life on. And all of a sudden, here I am, 29, 30, all of a sudden this platform came underneath me that I could reflect and make decisions about my life. And that
like a foundation. Built.
At that age, this foundation came under, and I could have something to just bounce off to make the decisions in my life. And that was the real, I think that was the real shift in my life, was all of a sudden I had something that I could reflect on, not with a dogma, not with, if you don't reflect on
this
that,
will happen.
I didn't really understand. I was a good person. I was trying to be a good person. I just was so lost. So all of a sudden I was found, because I could sit with this unbelievable foundation, and these ethics were thousands of years old.
Yes.
So
there has to be something in that, doesn't there?
It's a testament to the science of the yoga practice, the yoga technology, to be more relevant today than what it has ever been.
Do you call yoga a healing modality? Because everyone throws around different things.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So is it healing? Is it meditative? How would you say what yoga is from your perspective?
Yeah, really good point, because there are quite a few different terminologies thrown around. Yoga meets you, first of all, where you are.
Wow.
So that is the most To me, that's
Can you say that again, just to let that land, because it's actually really,
really
powerful.
profound, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yoga meets you where you are. So you don't have to have your hair longer. You don't have to have it curly. You don't have to have lost the 10 kilos or be able to touch your toes or have your mind together and be able to meditate. No, let go of all of that. Yoga meets you. And it's a science.
I feel greeted by that because I'm starting yoga this year and my husband's always a bit, but I can't this. And I'm actually just feeling really invited in by what you're saying.
It envelopes you. Because it's thousands of years old and it comes from a rich base of understanding and self-realized practice.
Yeah.
So it's not intellectual. It's highly to understand the ancient texts does take a degree of higher understanding, but the practice has come from a deep base of wisdom that has been self-understood, self-realized and practiced. It's not coming from a superficial surface. It's coming from a depth of knowing. And it's thousands of years old, and there is so many gems and treasures of understanding within this knowledge base that we can draw upon. And there's so many different pathways within the practice that to start with, it will meet you on, maybe it's the physical level that it meets you on. We let go of how it's going to meet you. You just start. You just start and it meets you.
I wish the listeners could see your eyes because I feel a sense of emotion, not any upset or anything, but it's like there is something so deep in you bringing forth this message that it's you, but it's more than you. So I'm sure the listeners will feel it, but it's like, oh my God, I'm sitting here looking and there's just, it's not, my eyes are just watery, not teary. I feel such a resonance. I tried yoga in my 20s after my first major car accident.
Yeah.
And I've heard people talk about it, and I feel more drawn to it now because I know my soul has been calling for it because of what you have just shared. Energetically, in tone, your words, I've never heard it spoken about like this before, that is actually reaching in and touching me.
I think, and I mean, this is just what we do as human, in our human realm, is we take a practice and we can take it out of context. And I think especially in the West with our, we really have this affinity with the physical.
And if we modernised it and pulled it apart a little bit.
Yeah, we're probably taking it away on a journey. The soul of the practice will always be there for whoever is searching for something deeper, and it will serve at whatever level, somebody is seeking. But I think it's not the practice that has gone astray. I think it's the people that have taken it and allowed it to serve them on that superficial physical level.
So the soul of it maybe has been.
The soul is always there. And, it's like the first rung of a ladder. It meets people on that physical level. Fantastic. And, somebody might just stay on that physical level. And I think that's maybe what has a lot of people have got caught up in the power of the physical practice, and it can make you very strong. But there's more rungs to the ladder.
It's layered.
But it is having the discipline, and it is having the abhyasa, that it's a Sanskrit term, but it's the continually showing up letting go of constructs and letting go of expectations and just continually showing up. And the pathway is there. The practice is there to meet you at each rung.
Wow. And then because of that, the continuation of your journey and leading you to translate Sanskrit,
I know.
Take us on the next part.
So it started with this practice of yoga and I loved it. And, it was a very physical practice that I started
well, it took, what, 2 years for you to really love it?
Well, it took me 2 years to close my eyes. It was when I closed my eyes that all of a sudden it was like a crack inside of me. Yeah. And it released an incredible amount of unprocessed stuff.
Yeah.
And it was quite frightening, but quite, whoa, this is powerful, wow. And it led me to wanting to know more about this science of this.
So like the exhilaration and the fear hand in hand almost.
Hand in hand. Yeah. And it also allowed me to have an experience of myself that I didn't know was there. So it was like a big mask had been pulled off of how I was living this life. And so I started to delve in a little bit more and was exposed to energies that were really quite powerful in this world. I'm talking like I then started to be open to like Thich Nhat Hanh, who's a Zen Buddhist, Zen master. He's passed now, but open to his work, what he was sharing with the world. And this is this deep vortex and wanting to really get down to the real kind of source of understanding this world. So, of course, I flew up to go on retreat with Thich Nhat Hanh and took my 2 boys with me because I really wanted them to sit at the feet of a realised.
How old were your boys?
My youngest son was 8 and my eldest son was 10. So I took them on a retreat. And it was the most incredible experience. I always, with my boys, when I've always taken them, they've been to Benedictine monasteries and stayed there. And so, I've always I'm fascinated. I really want to experience these people that have lived realizations. And Thich Nhat Hanh, he'd been, initiated when he was 16, 17, and this was when he was 70 odd. So we went up there and it was just with curiosity, never with an attitude of, okay, we've got to get the most out of this person. It's just more, let's sit ourselves at the feet of somebody that has lived in this way, different to us. No agenda, and just say, wow, what does that feel like? Wow, what is this person like? And interestingly, there was quite a few hundred people at this retreat with Thich Nhat Hanh, and we were all in a hall, just sitting and waiting for this Zen master to come in, and all his monks and nuns were up on the stage. And the boys and I were just having a laugh and getting to know the people that were around us. And next thing, my youngest one, who was 8 at the time, said, Mum, the big man, that's what they called him, the big man is in the house. And there was this energy that came through the hall that was so, the depth and the particles of the air, it was like they stood still.
I'm just having chills all the way through this conversation.
And there was this beautiful being that walked on through his disciples, and that he was tiny. He was half the size as me, and I'm quite short, and tiny, and he was half the size. But the resonance and the stillness that he emanated as he walked through, and he just sat, closed his eyes, and the hundreds of people, the drop into stillness was so palpable. And my boys sat there, and just I could see them just open to receiving. It was
what a powerful.
So that's the depth of where I go to. I want to sit at the feet of whoever is accessible that has lived a life of these practices that, I'm, right at the bottom rung there practicing. So then experiencing that, and my father was a singer. My father was a professional singer. He just retired this last year at 89, singing on the Anzac Day and Memorial Days.
Wow.
So I've grown up in a house of singing, and it always, I loved it. I always felt safe. It brought my father a lot of joy. It brought my mother a lot of joy. So it's one thing from my childhood that I just love. I feel joy.
Yeah.
So I wanted to sing, but singing English brought in constructs and expectations. So through the practice of yoga, I heard these Sanskrit terms, and we would do our oms at the start and the end of practice, and I loved that bit. Oh, gosh, I loved it all. But oh my gosh, my voice was all over the place. So it became a way of being able to express myself. I had actually gone through the experience as a child and as a teenager of not being able to express myself with words or vocally. So I got to the point at 21, I wasn't able to speak. My voice, I had nodules on my voice box, and I was told not to speak for 6 months.
Wow.
And then I had to go through speech therapy at 21 to learn how to speak again, to allow the breath to just flow through the vocal cords. So it always, there was a fascination there with this expression, but expressing myself in English there was a lot of stuckness.
I was going to ask you that, because if you translate the chants that you sing into English and you chanted them in English, will it have the same resonance as the Sanskrit language?
Yeah.
And why is that?
And why? So Sanskrit is an oral tradition, and Sanskrit, the Vedic chants, which is what I chant, is Sanskrit is said that it is not a language that is human. It's not a human made up language. It comes from beyond the human realm. So the Vedas were revealed to the ancient sages. It was like their Vedic wisdom was laid down into the lap of these sages. So it was revealed to them rather than a human mind kind of making this language and this knowledge up. So it's got every syllable within the Sanskrit language has got like a zip file of understanding and wisdom.
Wow.
And the beauty of chanting in Sanskrit, before you go through and translate it, the teacher will let you know when you're ready to understand what the chant is all about. You chant, so you chant in Sanskrit. And for us as English speakers, what that does is, because we don't understand, as a layperson, we wouldn't understand what's the meaning. So we switch off all of our analysing and evaluating and bringing in, this past flavour of all of that. We go beyond that prefrontal kind of executive function up there in the brain, and we release beyond that into the inner cortex and just allow the resonance to do whatever it's doing. We get out of the director's chair, so to speak.
Yeah, you get out of your own way.
You get out of your way.
Yeah.
And the resonance of this beautiful oral language that's thousands of years old, that's been chanted, the way I chant with the Vedic chants has been chanted for thousands of years. The same meter, it's got a sacredness to the pronunciation and to the meter. So you get out of the way and just let that ripple through.
And you lose all of that if you sing it in English.
That's it.
Because it completely changes the whole resonance. And
if we sing in English, we're in our constructs and our patterns. We're singing, we're just singing and going. I always think of it like a wave going through the brain. And if we sing in English in our own language, we are just going through the same patterns that we speak with, that we think with. Whereas we come into chanting with the Vedic chant, which has very strict rules, it's like we are chiseling through those patterns in the brain, and it has profound effect.
Wow. Well, I certainly haven't experienced that, and I would love to from you, and then even learn some myself. But in the work that I do, where I have to get out of my own way and sing energy to people, through people, or from people, there are times that I go into a certain mode, and it's like I can feel the understanding of the sound.
Yeah.
That's the only way I think I can relate.
Comes from the heart rather than the head.
Yeah. So I think I would very much
it's a
resonate with
though.
that. But yeah.
Strong discipline. It's a very strong discipline. So that's when, this is where this whole concept that yoga meets you where you're at. We start on this physical level because that's the part of us that we can really connect with, and we can feel, oh my gosh, I'm moving, and where are my patterns of where I might be holding.
Yes.
And then you delve beyond that into the deeper layers of this practice. And something like Vedic chanting is, again, this practice of, wow, where are my patterns as you're chanting along with the strict rules and you have to follow. There are challenges with certain patterns in this chanting that you chant and you get stuck on that pattern, and then that you work with a teacher one-on-one and they bring you back, go through it again. Once you get that notation, you get that pattern, you can actually, I can feel it's like an unraveling of deep ancient patternings in my brain, and it's like a whole new awareness of yourself.
Do you use some of this in your work with, high-level thinkers, or is it the teachings? But so from all of this, which, some things are just beyond the words and the language that we could give it. And that there's a lot of what you're talking about that I feel, I get, but not in the head and, okay, words back. So I'm babbling right now because what do you bring from those practices into this, probably I'd say, what is it, more corporate, high-level thinkers, doers?
That's a really good question. So I do really I love science. I love Western science. I've done studies in neuroscience, and I was in a master's course studying occupational therapy, and it was the neuroscience that I absolutely love. Because you could cut and slice and, it was all there. But then to be able to articulate the Western science into the yoga technology. But on the flip side of that, working with the high-level thinkers to be able to draw upon the wisdom from the ancient texts, and that's, with the learning Sanskrit that I do, and of course at ANU, I only go to the top, but learning this ancient language, you all of a sudden are sitting with texts that have an incredible, vast array of wisdom and knowledge. My fascination is how can we bring that knowledge, which is timeless, into this modern world that I certainly struggled with, and I definitely am one of those very quick thinkers. My mind, I've got like 10 minds up there that are just going all the time. How can we bring that wisdom that seems to have just been kind of tucked away, not lost, it'll never be lost, but how can we bring that wisdom and articulate it in a way that can resonate with these high-level thinkers? And there are poetry, there are beautiful gems that I bring in to actually describe the Western science understanding from stories from this.
So a bit like that foot in both worlds and bridging.
So it's always with me, it's always, how can I articulate this gem to support and open up an understanding of themselves and this world that we live in.
It's important now, don't you feel? It's like there's a screaming out for this now, and this integration of it all.
Yeah. And to just give understanding from a completely different little doorway. You know, these high thinkers, they're there. They are fully there, completely have an incredible grasp of higher wisdom. It's just that coming in through a little different window to allow them to be exposed in a way to a different expression of
or the experience of it.
So that's the other place that I sit with Kaye.
Yeah.
So you've got all this, fantastic stories.
Know this.
Or unbelievable poetry that can, and using analogies to articulate very complex experience of self. But to be able to allow these high-level thinkers to get out of that mind and drop in, get out of the body and start to experience, first of all, ground and just get out of that layer of thinking that's, you know, you've got 60,000 thoughts streaming through the mind. That's what one research is saying. Most of them we've had before. We've got incredible amount of stimulus outside of us. The mind is being drawn out.
And more so than ever.
More so than ever, our mind is being manipulated. So be able to remember, because all the skills are there, but just to be able to be guided back, allowing the senses to quieten, because that's how we experience the world around us, is through these senses. And they're like horses.
Yeah.
And if you've ever worked with horses, those horses, even one little sparkle in the paddock next to them, they're straight off to see what that is. That's what our senses are like. So the amount of stimulus, our mind is consuming so much information. To be able to have an experience and be guided back into a spaciousness that's there within us all, a spaciousness of quietness and stillness, because that is our inherent nature. That is what it means to be a human being.
Yes.
Quietness and stillness. And there is a well of that quietness and stillness deep within us.
Yes, there is.
But it just gets a little kind of covered by all
so it's bringing them in.
Taking them on a journey and reminding them that there is spaciousness within us of quietness and stillness.
It's the whole universe existing within us. I know that when I go into those spaces via meditation at times, there's no body, there's no end, it's just infinite. Incredible.
And once you have that, then the power of being able to release from the patterning, the constructs in the mind, that is when you start to experience the bigger. It's like you've cleaned this, one of my teachers would say, we're cleaning the windscreen of the mind.
Yeah.
And not only are we cleaning it to see clearly, we are broadening our perspective. So for these high-level thinkers in their CEO and directors roles, to be able to broaden the windscreen of your mind, you can then start to be innovative. You're bringing in new ways of operating. It's there. It's so easy.
Yeah.
And that's how I work with people, because it needs to be articulated in a way that's very accessible, because these high-level thinkers like me, I get bored so quick.
Do you feel that it brings in the innate intelligence of that knowing that we have within us, whether you call it inner voice of knowing and power, but that doesn't matter what you call it, but that innate well of knowing that we all have, that then gets married with what they know intellectually.
Yeah. You could think of it as kind of shifting up above the noise. Say the analogy of the horses, they're the senses. This is an analogy from 1500 BC in one of the ancient texts. The mind is the reins connected to these horses, so that it's in our vernacular, rein in the mind.
Yes.
So we rein in the mind, allow it to release from that monkey mind jumping all over the place. You've got the driver there who is the higher intellect that is...
Chills again.
But you've got the charioteer who, if you can picture, you've got your chariot is the body, you've got the person driving, holding onto the reins and reining in that mind, these horses of the senses, reining in that consuming of all these sensory objects. But you've got the charioteer that's sitting above all of that and surveying the vastness of what is out around. So it's like with these practices, you lift up above what we know, all of our constructs and, from childhood and, from what we've learned, lift above that. The power then for understanding beyond what you've already been doing and living in. It's so incredibly powerful. And to be guided to then know that that's all there within you.
Yes.
It's just taking the time every day to practice.
And then we stop seeking out there, the next shiny thing, the next thing the person says you need.
And there's nothing wrong with that. Yeah, brilliant. We live in this world that's unbelievable.
But you'll know then which one to listen to, which one to, that discerning.
The discerning mind. So you're not just swept away with the incredible amount of bings and bongs that are out there. You are centered within you. You're like that charioteer that's sitting. And then you can decide where your energy is going to go.
Through leadership, that leadership that comes from within that I'm so passionate about when I work with people. That's
powerful.
It's really powerful.
Yeah.
So what is a gem? Just what, if you could just say one thing, because we could sit here for hours, to be honest. We probably will have to have you back. I've got a lot of guests that I go, we're going to have you back later on. One thing for the listeners that you could just, one gem.
Take away.
Just one gem, one takeaway.
Yeah, that's it. Oh, gosh, there's so many gems there. No, I think the one thing that I would say is we as a society at the moment are incredibly adept at the doing and the striving, and we've been incredibly successful. What we need to also remember is that we need to put the practice and devote the time to also coming back and experiencing ourselves as to what it means to be a human being.
Yeah.
And you need to book that in, like you book in, you clean your teeth and you eat your food. You book in moments that you allow everything to just settle in the body, in the nervous system, in the mind, and take the time to get to know yourself, the real inner truth.
I love that, because I'm the same thing. We learn to brush our teeth. We learn to, dress us up. We learn to drink water because it's good for us. We learn to put sunblock on and all these things.
But no one teaches us.
This is so important.
Yeah, I devised a whole product specifically to facilitate that ability for people to take just 5 minutes to ground the mind.
Yeah.
And just
I'm with you. It doesn't have to be a big, lengthy.
No, and it doesn't have to be the meditation.
And 5 minute turns into another, then it turns to 10, and then it turns.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's finding those moments within your day to actually just sit.
It's a lot simpler than people think it is, isn't it?
That there are ways that you can access just being guided to start with, to enable that. It's a habit that you're creating.
And what is inner voice of knowing for you?
Inner voice of knowing.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, it's an energy, Kaye. Oh my gosh, inner voice of knowing is, well, it's exactly what the yogis sit with this experience of Thich Nhat Hanh, that inner voice of knowing, is coming from that deep space of stillness. And it emanates up through and out into the world. It's incredibly powerful.
And I don't know if you're in alignment with this, but for me, it's when we do what you're talking about and in varying ways, then it's an incredibly loud voice.
It's incredibly powerful.
Yeah.
And it resonates.
It's not a little whisper.
No.
The whisper is because it's covered up with everything else.
Exactly. Yeah. It comes out with a power behind it that is infinite. And it can ripple and rain down on everyone, everywhere.
Wow. Oh, I feel like I've had the pleasure of sitting here looking into your eyes through this whole journey, having chills wash all over me. There is just so much there. I really encourage the listeners to really listen more than once. And if you want to take notes, but then come back and listen to it with your eyes closed and feel and be taken on the journey that you, Helen, have so beautifully taken us on. And I know it's just like a scratch on the surface of what you have to offer, but I'm just so thankful. And I have to say that we were out having lunch with some other wise, wonderful women, and it's like, I want you to come for the podcast. Oh, yes. And I just love, this is the one of many things that I really love about you. Not just like, but I love about you. Just light up. You've got that childlike enthusiasm, essence of me, really? And I'm just like, and I haven't even heard all of this. I'm just like, are you kidding me? Yes, of course you.
Yes.
And then sitting here now going, wow, we need to catch up one-on-one so that I can.
Because that was fun. I didn't know. I wasn't sure what was going to come up. None of that would have ever come into my consciousness of.
Yeah. And just so the listeners know, this is where I think I said it. Well, I know I said in the trailer about not just conceptual, but it's a journey.
Yeah.
And, you know, quite often when I've invited some guests, they've gone, well, you know, do you want me to give you the list of things you want? And I'm like, no, don't want lists. We're not going to discuss what we're going to talk about.
Yeah.
We're going to connect. I connect with you. If I don't know you, we do a quick thing. Yeah. And then please trust that this is going to be a conversational journey, because the shamanic side of me always says, if we plan this too much,
it's too much,
we get lost.
Yeah.
It's too much in the head. Yeah. If we just connect and start,
it comes
and then
from a deeper place.
I'm there with you and I pick something and it's like, let's bring some more of that out. And then you were doing it without, you know, being in the head as well.
I love that. I feel like I've learned more about myself.
Yeah. And it does. It becomes an integrative journey. So there's so much in what you've said and how you've said it and the journey that, please listen, take some notes, but then go back and close your eyes and just sit there outside, maybe in the garden,
in the grass, with
the
cat,
and really feel your way through this beautiful journey that, Helen, you have taken us on.
I'm going to listen back.
Bless. I have guests that listen back and go,
wow, was that me?
And I think that's a really important point. You know, I think I said that with Kath when I interviewed Kath, and I'd done her brand blueprint. Sorry, I'm right in my feeling element right now. And she came back with notes when she was coaching me and read stuff out. And I'm like, God, that's amazing. And she's like, that's you. So how amazing if sometimes we stopped journaling and actually just pressed record and closed our eyes and spoke.
Yeah.
And then we come back to it later on.
Hearing from a different window, a different door into the deeper patterning.
Yeah. And it's different from then reading. Yeah. Oh, did I write that? It's different then, because then we can come back and close our eyes and feel what we've said.
This is a gift, Kaye. Thank you.
So, Helen.
It's been amazing.
Well, it's been amazing for you. It's been incredible for me. So, listeners, please, on some of the platforms, you can, you know, go in there, put questions and feedback and things. And, hey, listen, if you've got enough coming up there and questions, we'll get Helen back and take another journey.
Oh, I'd love
because you're a never-ending well of deliciousness. Let's just say that.
Oh, I love it. Thank you, Kaye. That you took me into that inner voice of knowledge. And that's where it came from. It's just beautiful.
Beautiful.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Helen. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Join me on my next episode. And if you love this podcast, please subscribe by clicking on the plus button if you're on Apple, or like and follow on Spotify. Rate and review. And please share Inner Voice of Knowing with your friends.